This is the Fantasy Football Game Plan, where we talk about fantasy football and the NFL.
Hey, Scott.
How you doing?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Good.
And are you ready for Bye-Mania?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of people in buys this week.
Yeah, let's get right to it. So the Bills, the Cowboys, Jacksonville, the Chargers, the Vikings, and the Steelers all on buys this week. That's huge.
Yeah, that's a lot of teams.
Yeah, well, a lot of my points come from the Vikings, so I'll have to figure something else out this week. But it's going to be thin. Some lineups are going to be thin because in addition to all of that, we got injuries. Latavius Murray got injured. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are both going to be out Thursday. Christian McCaffrey's on IR. Kadarius Toney, who we were talking up, he got injured. So Alex Collins, we were talking him up. He got injured. T.Y. Hilton played one game, got hurt again. I don't know if he's going to keep playing. Paris Campbell also got hurt on that team. So they're in trouble receiver-wise over there. Oh, Dawson Knox broke a bone in his hand on the Monday nighter. So he's hurt now.
And Miami actually doesn't have a bye week, which is interesting because they were just playing in London, but Jacksonville gets the day off for kicking a field goal, I guess.
Yeah, a couple long field goals. Travel all that way just to lose by a field goal. That's tough.
Yeah, I guess the impact is Pittsburgh and Chargers, and then obviously Minnesota and Buffalo. Those are, and Dallas as well too. Like you're looking at like a lot of potential points just not being available. So, maybe this is the week where you really need to look at the waiver wire if you haven't stacked your bench leading up to week 7, right? Because we all knew this was coming. And, there's some weeks, I remember at the beginning of the year when I was looking at this, are heavier than others. So last week, I think we only had 4 buys, and this week now we have 7. So that's
six, right?
6, yeah.
That's a lot. That's really a lot. Although the Chargers, fantasy-wise, well, I mean, the Chargers are only going to score 6 points less than they scored last week.
I don't know what happened there. That was crazy. Maybe they just thought that they were the best thing around, and they didn't have to come out and compete. But what was the final score of that game? I'm just trying to look that up right now.
Something to 6, maybe 31-6. It was bad. So Baltimore's really looking good lately. Yeah. So we should get into it because there's a lot to do. So let's look at the quarterback situation. Tua played better than I thought that he would. First game back, long flight to Great Britain. He put up some points and fantasy-wise, and I guess we got to look at him this week because it's so thin at the QB position, but he might help you this week. Yeah.
He's available in most leagues. I think people kind of drop him after or they have him on the bench. I'm not really too sure.
Yeah, especially because he's coming off that injury, right? So a lot of people probably dumped him out when he went on IR earlier this season. So he's probably available. Now, if you don't have Dak Prescott or somebody like that this week, take a look. Also, Jameis Winston's coming off a bye. So I have a feeling that you might be able to find him on your waiver wire. I know that he's not the greatest, but again, we're talking about being thin this week. If you're desperate, you could look at him. Daniel Jones made it back into the lineup after his concussion, and it really looked like he should have maybe just stayed home for another week.
Yeah.
That was just not fair. The Giants against the Rams, that was just not fair. And then who's been looking good? Well, we always have Sam Darnold because he's always sort of borderline. He's not a number 1, but he might be able to help you. If you're stuck. And Carson Wentz is looking good. Should we move on to the running backs? Because there's just a ton to talk about. You have that Cleveland game coming up on Thursday with both Chubb and
Hunt.
Chubb and Hunt are both out. So,
yeah, so who's running the ball?
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
who's running the ball, and are they going to be running the ball? Because like those two guys are kind of like A gap north-south runners, and the guys I've seen are pretty small running backs. One is a converted wide receiver running back, and the other one I don't really know. And those guys, yeah. So it's interesting. Like, what are you going to do? Maybe your bench has these guys. Like, is it really worth picking up for the week?
Yeah. So the guys we're talking about are ErnestJohnson and Demetric Felton.
Yeah, that Felton guy's that running back, wide receiver flex kind of thing.
Okay.
Wide receiver.
Well, I think there'll be some short passes thrown because I know Baker's hurt, and we finally got Odell Beckham Jr. back on the field for a couple of games, and he's hurt again. I don't know if Jarvis Landry is going to make it for Thursday. He's come off IR. I've had him since my draft. He's been on IR the whole time. He had a couple of games and then he went out. So I don't know if I'm even going to be able to play him this week, but he is a possibility. So that gets us with an injured quarterback and injured receivers. That gets us throwing the ball to the running back, especially if he's a converted receiver. So, if you're desperate at running back, I think you got to look at Cleveland. There's a couple of possibilities there.
Yeah, Felton. So maybe pick up Felton.
Okay.
The other guy, I don't know. Maybe.
Well,
it's
I think
one of those things you may want to stick away from. Maybe, I don't know. It's just what's going to happen with Baker Mayfield. What they're going to do.
Yeah, it's just that when there's so many buys, I mean, there's not a lot of options in some cases, depending on, who you got. I mean, if you can get Kenyon Drake, who had disappeared for a while, and all of a sudden, pops up huge for the Raiders this week. If you can get him, in my league, he's available. So, people are going to try to get him right off the bat because he had such a huge game. You've got the Baltimore situation where all their running backs scored a touchdown, but then Latavius Murray got hurt. So I hate to say it, but now you're looking at guys like Lev Bell, or Devonta Freeman, probably the better choice.
Right, but we've talked about this in weeks after weeks. Lamar Jackson is the best running back on that team, and he's going to keep the ball more so than he's going to give the rock. And now he has passing threats, like Bateman's coming back, and then they have that Donovan guy, and they have Mark Andrews. So, if Jackson can't run the ball, he's throwing it to the really qualified receivers.
Yeah.
So do you just pick up somebody because Murray? Oh gosh, Murray was running, 8 carries for 12 yards,
and a touchdown. Well, the thing is, I would take a touchdown from a player, week in and week out. Last week, you could have started any one of those running backs, and he'd have got you a touchdown.
That's correct.
So I mean, that's almost 10 points. If the guy does anything else, you're almost getting 10 points. So that's huge. But there's lots more names. I think Ramondre Stevenson from New England had a touchdown, and the starter there was limping around. So Harris, I don't know how bad his injury is. It's something to monitor, but you might want to pick up Ramondre Stevenson. And then in Washington, Antonio Gibson's had a nagging injury all season, and he actually went out of the game last week. So McKissick was a sort of boom or bust kind of a guy before. Sometimes even with Gibson playing, he'd have a huge game.
Mm-hmm.
But now Gibson's, not going to be the main guy. It's going to go to McKissick now.
Yeah, they have another running back on that team too called Patterson.
Yeah.
And he is expected to get a bigger role. So if McKissick already has their, his job duties already defined,
right?
Maybe they give Gibson's job duties to this other guy. So how do you weigh yourself if you've never seen it? Maybe it's a gamble, right? To pick up either one of those guys and see what production they're going to get. And if they score touchdowns, then you're laughing. But yeah, Gibson, very high-ranking running back and high-profile running back to be out, and especially on this crazy bye week with 6 teams on around. So good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the rookie because, you know, you've got to put him, he's got to be able to pass protect and, you know, and catch balls. And so we haven't seen him doing that very much. Who knows? Maybe he's great, but we just haven't seen it. So it's really hard. I mean, it's a gamble. If you're desperate, why not? Look at Patterson. But, you know, there's a few other guys that are out there.
They're just they're so thin with having like Curtis Samuel and Sims, like the receivers are not there anymore. You know,
yeah.
Harry McLaren was questionable all the way till like game day,
right?
You know, like some high butt or low butt injury. So like it's just like someone has to do something, and if it's Humphreys, then it's Humphreys, or if it's McKissick, or if it's Patterson, like someone's going to have to do something on that team.
Yeah,
Heineke's got to get into that groove again. So you know, he showed really great numbers first 3 weeks, and then now he's kind of just being that average kind of quarterback, but maybe he hasn't had the time to mesh with these new guys since all his threats are kind of, you know, taken away.
Yeah, so I mean, some other names to look at. There's Chris Evans from the Bengals. He's been getting some work.
Yeah,
he's been banged up. They've been sprinkling him in with Pirine. Also, we talked a lot about Alex Collins last week, and if you picked him up, great. He had a great game, but he also got injured in the game. So now you got to look at the next guys down on the depth chart. So we're looking at Travis Homer is one of the guys that I think you can consider, and DJ Dallas, because Chris Carson is still out.
Yeah, IR another 2 weeks. So very tough decision on this one too. So if you really need a running back, it's 50-50. It's kind of like a Washington game too. Like,
yeah,
pick one of them. Hopefully somebody, you know, gets the ball, is hot.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully last week you picked up Chuba Hubbard and Khalil Herbert, because they're still getting a lot of reps, and we did recommend them last week. But yeah, there's a lot to get to. So unless you've got something you want to add to this, we should probably move on to the next category.
Yep, let's go.
All right. So now we're looking at receivers. You were referring to the Ravens situation because they've got a couple of guys that are looking good.
Lamar's throwing the ball better than he's ever have in the past. So
yeah, he is. And what's interesting I find about that is that it makes him a better NFL quarterback, but fantasy wise, not as good. When he's at the goal line handing off the ball and, you know, there's 3 rushing touchdowns, everyone's keying on him. So 3 times down at the goal line, he hands it off and the running back scores. If you have Lamar for fantasy, it's got to hurt because now he's throwing the ball. So you get less points for throwing than you do for running. So while he's becoming a better NFL quarterback fantasy-wise, he's dropping a bit in stature.
Yeah, well, he's fumbling the ball in key situations. He's fumbled 2 weeks in a row at the end zone. So maybe they're just like, give it to the person that knows how to hold the ball instead of holding the ball like this.
Yeah.
Come on. So maybe it's a coaching decision being like, Lamar, you don't know how to carry the ball. Like if you run 50 yards in the end zone, you know, that's a good fantasy points. But when it comes to like goal line, you know, maybe we'll get somebody else to carry the ball because you're still just going to hold it with one hand up in the air and let someone punch it out.
Right.
So maybe it's just, you know, smart coaching.
Or throw it to Rashad Bateman.
He should be good. So pick him up if you need, because Watkins is out.
Yeah.
And so they're going to need somebody else because, you know, people are going to, you know, they're going to do that. Look at Brown, give him more. And, you know, this guy could get open. And that Dunavy guy that I was talking about.
Yeah, Duvernay. Yeah.
Hey, maybe he's also up there too.
Yeah. So Duvernay and Bateman from Baltimore. Got to take a look at them. T.Y. Hilton came in. Of course, he was playing Houston. He always goes off against Houston. So he had a good game, but he got banged up. And Paris Campbell got banged up too. So in Indy, it's a weird receiver situation. They've got good players, but they're all hurt.
You're saying to pick up Wentz as your quarterback, and we don't know who he's throwing to.
Right. Well, he's doing well. I mean, he's distributing the ball, and he's got a good running game and a decent defense there. So, as we said, Wentz is a guy to look at. And then, if Hilton is healthy, he is a guy to consider. Okay, in Cleveland, we talked a little bit about the injuries in Cleveland. So a guy that was on our list last week was Peoples-Jones. And if you picked him up, you got 2 touchdowns. One was a Hail Mary.
That's a good catch.
Yeah, but he caught, he only caught 4 balls, but it was for over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's only rostered in like 1% of people's leagues. And I mean, with OBJ being injured, Jarvis Landry, not clear what's happening there. The running backs we talked about, he could be a good pickup this week, possibly.
OBJ might be going to another team if somebody wants him.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
what's interesting is that Cleveland did have a pretty stacked house of a wide receiver room entering the league, and Peoples-Jones was someone we spoke about, before week 1 even kicked off. Interesting what his role would go forward. Definitely, if he is available, keep him on your bench, because you can't really just say 1 week you're a superstar. You know what I mean? You need to have constant, reps going in, and if he's a huge man. He's a tall guy. So if you're in trouble, you get a tall guy. You can get those jump balls, which we saw that he can do.
Right.
And he can box people out. So yeah, like this guy is definitely someone to think about. Landry's injured. Running backs are gone. Peoples-Jones catches balls.
Yeah. He'd be the next man up, and they got to throw to somebody. So yeah, good point. Another guy we have on our list quite often, who's very consistent, is Tim Patrick. And we have mentioned him before.
Yep.
But I think, he's available in a lot of leagues. He's only, I think, 29% rostered. So, you mentioned before, he's a big guy. And, they're throwing the ball in Denver. They're getting behind. And he's one of their main options. So take a look and see if you can get Tim Patrick. And then, we've talked about Christian Kirk before. Any piece of that you can get of the Cardinals offense right now looks good, especially during Bye-Mania, because they're so prolific of an offense. They put up so many points. They do spread it around, and everybody eats there, so you could get Christian Kirk, he could go off, and they've got other receivers there that are worth looking at.
Yep. Arizona's a good match, like we've talked about. We forgot the Raiders. It looks like people are catching the ball. Bryan Edwards as well as Henry Ruggs, the tray.
Yeah, you're right. They're play action passing now. Their offense looked a little different without Gruden calling the shots.
Yep.
And
you got Drake back playing, right? So you got that read, and and then more people are catching the balls. So good thing over there. Maybe Ruggs is that wide receiver 1, because that was still not established on that team from week 1. Let's see what happens if he's available. I know in my league he's been off people's benches, like he's been picked up. He's like kind of like that toss around player, and same thing too with Bryan Edwards. People are just like picking him up and then finding someone better and replacing him. But maybe it's now worth picking those 2 guys up and putting them somewhere, because bye week's going to happen.
Yeah.
Vegas is on a bye week next week. So week 8, Vegas is on a bye week. So
right.
Maybe to consider into week 9.
Right. Also, just one more quick, Rondelle Moore might be available from Arizona in your league, take a look, because he's another guy who could have a huge game week to week. You just never know. Okay, moving on to tight ends. So we mentioned that Dawson Knox has got a broken bone in his hand, and the Bills don't play this week, but that's an injury that'll last a while. We talked last week about Ricky Seals-Jones, and he went out and had a pretty great game. So he caught four balls for 58 yards and a touchdown, and 11.8 points in standard fantasy scoring. So that'd be more in PPR. But
it's kind of like what we were talking about with who's catching the ball in Washington with all their injuries. So
yeah,
he's definitely someone who's got some trust with the quarterback. So great pickup if you can get him.
Yeah, and I mean, Mo Alley Cox is the same situation in Indianapolis. He's a tight end that's caught a touchdown the last couple of games. The receivers are banged up there. So he's a huge man, scoring a lot of points, down by the end zone. So I think you got to take a look at him. And
there's also the ex-Ram, now Seattle, Everett. He is a COVID case, and he does have problems with his health, but he actually came back last week and played a pretty solid game. So if you're not scared of COVID, Everett is also someone to look at.
It seems like every week there's overtime now in the NFL.
Yeah, there's like 2. Yeah, it's good. You know what that means? It means that, all teams are competitive, right? Like they're all kind of like built the same way, or like the strategy and the coaching behind it is equally the same, and people are matching up their tests.
Yeah, I mean, some teams, teams like the Chiefs that we've seen just be so dominant in the past. Another team, the Chargers, they were looking really scary, both those teams, but now teams are playing them a little different. It seems like they're not as prolific offensively as they were, and their blemishes are starting to show, and they're not putting up the points. The games are getting closer.
Yeah, game's definitely getting closer, except for if you're watching a Detroit Lions game.
I'm sorry.
Hey, I read some. I got a joke for you. What do you call it when Jared Goff completes 3 consecutive passes?
I don't know. You got me.
4th and 2nd.
4th and 2. Yeah, I mean, we've put some Detroit receivers on our list in the past.
I told you to stay away from them. Stay away from any Detroit.
Yeah.
Unless you have Swift. Guaranteed Swift could do, and Hawkinson can catch the ball. But any wide receiver, stay away.
Well,
somebody.
Teams are keying on Hawkinson now, and he's their main target. You can't have your tight end as your main featured target. He's a guy that can sneak up on people because of a mismatch, because everybody's worried about your receivers. But you can't come out with your tight end as your main guy, because teams can shut that down. It's just too easy.
Yep. To
get help from the safety. And the Lions, I'm sorry, man. It's really, I'd say it's hard to watch, but I'm not watching. I just don't bother.
It's horrible. Like, I'm watching the game on Sundays and I'm going, oh yeah, this is, and then all of a sudden I'm throwing on like an afternoon or watching like Monday Night Football last night, and was like, holy cow, like the caliber of football. Like, just for instance, like, we haven't even talked about defense, but like Pittsburgh just coming in with sacks and blocks, and like exciting both ways of football, not just offensive heavy, which we only talked about in fantasy leagues. We just talked about offensive players, but like the defensive game really like making things exciting. And I'm just like, yeah, I always say to myself, oh, being a Detroit Lions fan, at least like there's always entertainment, but it's so much stress and boring all the way until like the end, and then it climaxes and then it ends. But most of the NFL games that have been hitting prime time, especially like even last night's like buzzer killer, like they are seriously like going way to the last second, or 2 minutes, and just going like you're just losing your mind, being like the game could go any way and there's 3 minutes left. Or if you're any team that can drive down the field 50 yards, kick a field goal, There's like Kirk Cousins is doing, it's crazy. Like yeah, like wow, like entertaining football there, and then Detroit is not doing anything. Could be watching SFU football squad up there, like university football.
Yeah, I mean, you could be watching real football, or you could watch the Lions game. And they're playing the Rams this week, that's just going to be so horrible because the Rams defense is just so good. I mean, look what they did to the Giants. That was horrible. And then now, Goff used to play for the Rams. So they're going to want to play extra hard, against him. A lot of guys over on the other side, will step it up. And Goff, I mean, what's he supposed to do? They have no answers. And that Rams defense is scary good.
Yep. Well, anyways, enough about the Lions, but I just wanted to throw in that joke.
Yeah, it was a good joke. It was a good joke. More than two. Okay, so that wraps it up for this week. I did not win. I was ahead going into last night's game, and the guy I was playing had Derrick Henry. So you know what happened to me.
3 touchdowns later.
Yeah.
195 yards, I think, or something like that. Week 6. Like, is he going to get 2,000?
Yeah. Well, maybe. I mean, the Bills are a good defense, and he had a huge game against them. So, yeah, well, stay tuned. He just gets better as the season goes on, too, as it starts to become, bad weather, and you have these games in the mush. That's when he's more valuable. So, yeah, stay tuned. Watch Derrick Henry. He's having a great season. He's going to do great things.
Yeah, considering people didn't pick him as number 1, or even like after last year's performance, top offensive player of the year, and like he's just a grinder, and he's obviously the key focus of the Titans offense. Obviously, they have great wide receivers too, but it's just interesting how far he goes back. I think he was like waiver wire 5 or something like not waiver.
Yeah, I
wire.
think he was like, it was like the 5th favored back. Well, it's that pass catching thing, right? I mean, they tried to throw him a screen pass last night and he fell down, so that there's no point. I mean, PPR, gives you a lot of points for getting a catch, and they don't really throw to him that much.
Yeah.
So I think that's why his rankings are affected. But you know what? You don't need to, because he can take it 76 yards to the house. So who cares if he doesn't catch a lot of passes?
And he seems to have his biggest games on like like the prime time, right? Like,
right.
Like 2 years ago, he broke down the sideline for 99 yards, right?
Right.
So it always seems like in the big games he's always coming out. Really elevates his status.
Yeah.
And say, oh yeah, he's an elite back, because when he is on TV, he knows he's on TV, and he's killing. So good job for Mr. Henry.
Yeah, big time players make big time plays in big time games. That's Derrick Henry. Okay, good luck this week.
Thanks. Oh, I won this week. I squeaked by. I was able to squeak by with Najee Harris carrying the ball multiple.
Wow. Okay, because that surprises me, because I mean, I know you've got Eckler, you've got some other guys. We're gonna put up our rosters probably on next week's show, just kind of show what we're dealing with. But I mean, yeah, who else came through for you besides Harris?
I just was playing like an opponent that just had the same kind of miserable week like I had. No one. Brady wasn't doing, Evans wasn't doing no one was doing anything. That Sutton was catching the ball.
Yeah.
Addison on the bench because of the bye. So if it wasn't for Sutton catching the late touchdown, and Moore was dropping everything.
Yeah.
I was watching it. I was watching it before we went to overtime. He could have had a touchdown, and it would have got him a little bit more points. But it was a very tough week for me. And after watching the Lions game, and then I usually don't look at my fantasy until the Lions game is over.
Yeah.
So until the afternoon games start, because I don't kind of want to have like conflicting kind of emotions. And so I just like left Sunday really. This is crazy, and it was to the toe at the night game, and yeah, Najee Harris just got me where I needed to go, which made me beat the other guy out by 6 points. But
That's great.
Shouldn't have happened. It just shouldn't have happened. So
Okay, so you're 5-1.
I am 5-1.
Oh, that's impressive. Nice. Okay, we'll keep at it. Good luck.
Yeah, it's a long season though, and it's tough. Injuries do hurt you, and
Yeah.
that's the tough thing, is that you can never account for, like, if you pick Gibson up, right? Like,
That's me. I got Gibson. He probably cost me because he went out in the middle of the game and
yeah, get you 4 points, where if you had Sony Michel, he would have given you 10. But you know what I mean? Like, it's just like when a player goes out in the middle of the game or beginning of the game, there's nothing you can do except for hope that somebody overachieves and makes up that point gap that you're expecting.
Yeah, it didn't happen for me.
We'll talk next week.
Sounds good.
Okay, good luck.
Okay, have a good one. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching the Fantasy Football Game Plan podcast. Need coaching on your lineup? Drop us a line and we'll discuss your dilemma.